The final scene we ever see Avon Barksdale in is the scene where he surprises Marlowe Stanfield in prison, face to face with his biggest enemy, or at least that's what we thought. You see, among revealing himself to still be the King of Baltimore, always and forever, Avon also reveals that Marlowe Stanfield isn't in fact his biggest enemy, and it's actually Proposition Joe who he wants dead more than anybody else. And the reason why isn't what many Wire fans think, as a lot of people like to refer back to what D'Angelo said in Season 1 to understand Avon's decision.
Nah man, that ain't right. Fuck right. It ain't about right, it's about money.
Implying that Avon's willing to let Marlowe slide so long as there's $1 to be made. And given his current predicament, why not ignore what's right, that being to take out Marlowe Stanfield, and do business with him instead. However, if you knew anything about Avon Barksdale, you would know him to be a soldier above all else, somebody who would rather risk it all for his reputation than do business with the enemy.
Them co-op boys, man, yeah, ain't too happy about that situation, man. Yeah, they say they got cops on corners where they wouldn't have otherwise. Everybody nervous.
Man, fuck them niggas.
Now, if Avon's reason for giving up Prop Joe weren't as simple as good business, then surely his reason must be that of revenge. You see, the scene Avon was last in prior to this, McNulty revealed to him that his lifelong friend in Stringer Bell was a snitch, resulting in Avon going back to prison and the Barksdale dynasty coming to an end. And for this, Avon blames Proposition Joe, as the only reason Stringer Bell snitched was because he didn't want to lose out on what Proposition Joe had been selling him, essentially saying that Prop Joe was the reason behind Avon's arrest. However, it runs much deeper than Joe just manipulating Stringer. You see, if Joe never got in Stringer's ear, not only would Avon not be in prison, but he would have also killed Marlowe Stanfield. Prop Joe hadn't just gotten Avon arrested, but he had also robbed him of killing his biggest rival. And for this, Avon wanted Joe dead.
But fuck all them East Side bitches. That's just the way I feel about it.
Avon Barksdale and Proposition Joe only share a single scene over the course of the entire show. However, it's a scene in which we learn a lot about how Prop Joe operates. You see, Avon tells Joe halfway through the game that it just isn't his year, implying that Proposition Joe isn't much of a threat to Avon or Westside. And so Joe gives Avon a proposition. He wants to wager a clean 5 figures, and seeing as though Avon is winning, he views the proposition as something he'd be stupid to deny, so he accepts, only to later have the rug pulled out from under him, as the once harmless Proposition Joe reveals what he's been hiding this entire game. Now, the way Joe sets up his propositions, coupled with when he offers them to you, are what I would like to describe as very conniving. You see, Joe offers you something at a time in which you're either desperate or on top of the world, and the offer comes across as something that right now would only seem to benefit you, or couldn't possibly hurt you. However, after a period of time passes, you soon come to learn that there's a catch, and that what originally sounded so lucrative isn't all it seems. As the saying goes, you've just fallen for something that were too good to be true. And this, Prop Joe is surprisingly able to get away with for one simple reason: there's always somebody else to blame. When setting up a proposition, Joe cleverly places himself in the role of middleman, and he does this because if shit were to go south, you would blame somebody else before you blame Joe. Take for example the sit down he organised between Stringer and Omar regarding Brother Mouzone. Both Joe and Stringer wanted Brother gone, however Joe knew that his name couldn't be anywhere near the hit just in case Omar saw it for what it was: a hoax, an attempt to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. and so he acts as if he's nothing more than a mediator, completely oblivious to a proposition both he and Stringer came up with together. The hit goes wrong, and brother blames Stringer instead of Joe.
Your man, in effect, sought to have me hit. Omar told you that and you believe that motherfucker? He doesn't strike me as a man who would tell stories, even at the point of dying.
Now, Avon is one of few characters actually able to see Proposition Joe for the snake in the grass that he really is. However, his insight wasn't made apparent until the show's ending. As to put it plainly, he simply didn't know Joe was scheming until the scheme in question got him arrested. Yet for some reason, he's still able to steer clear from all that Joe offers for the majority of the show. And I'll explain why. You see, in order for somebody to turn down what on the surface comes across as only beneficial, you need to possess one of two things. First is the ability to recognise another person's intentions. If I accept this proposition, how might it benefit them more than it does me? Norman, who was Carcetti's aide, perfectly displays this ability in Season 5, when he's able to recognise that Clay Davis is running a game on the two, despite not knowing what exactly that game is.
He and Burrell are thick as thieves.
And do we know what the long con is?
At least we know he's running one. She...
Which is exactly the point. You don't need to know how exactly Joe's going to set you up, so long as you know that he's setting you up. Which in Avon's case, grants him the ability to turn down Joe's propositions. Secondly, is that one must possess strong principles. Principles that will allow you to turn down Prop Joe. He offers product for territory at a time when the Barksdales are desperate. However, Avon and his principals aren't willing to give up the towers no matter the circumstance. And so he's protected from Joe's long con, despite him being unaware that Joe was even running one.
Yo, proposition Joe. He came to the funeral. Pulled me aside. I mean, he's got a smoker. Everybody knows he's got a smoker and he wants to share. If we cut him a slice of the towers. You know, it's a thought.
It's not even a thought, man. No.
Come Avon's second stint in prison, he's fortunate enough to be granted with something many haven't, and that something is time. Nothing but time to think over his demise. And after a while, he comes to terms with the fact that it isn't Stringer Bell who he should be blaming for his downfall. Rather, it's the man who was whispering in Stringer's ear the entire time he was in jail. As if you remember rightly, it was during Avon's first stint in prison that Joe first approached Stringer and offered him a proposition, as Joe knew that if Avon were around, then there was no way he was going to be able to manipulate the second in command. As despite Avon not being the most knowledgeable, as mentioned, he is one of few who possess the ability to understand when Ron's running a game, hiding their intentions through clever words or stories.
No, who the fuck you talking about?
I know you don't. And the police don't. And the stick-up boys wouldn't have a fucking clue either. Cause Charlie Sala's just sold dope. No profile, no street rep. Just buy for $1, sell for $2.
Now, I feel it's important to note that Joe turning Stringer against Avon, leading to the two's demise and Joe's takeover of the co-op, was more a show of Joe's intelligence than it was of Stringer's stupidity. And what I mean by this is that all of the mistakes Stringer made resulting in his and his partner's downfall was more because of Joe's manipulation than it was anything else. You see, Stringer acts as if he's a businessman who simply operates in the streets. However, because he isn't treated as such by anybody of note, he naturally becomes susceptible to the man who'll give in to his facade. And that man is no other than Proposition Joe, who acts as if he too is just another businessman, simply conversing with a peer far above the level of all the other gangsters. And because Stringer finally feels as though he's engaging with somebody on the same page as his, he sides with the man who plays into his delusions, rather than the man who tells him how it really is.
You know what, I look at you these days, you know what I see? I see a man without a country. Not hard enough for this right here. And maybe, just maybe, not smart enough for them out there.